I don't have a typical day at work because every day is so different. But I have clients that I go to on a regular basis for maintenance, and I have lots of design work which keeps me busy through the winter months. So here we are at Glenham Hall, one of my projects, as we come through the gates here. And I'm here today to work alongside the volunteer of mine, Judy, and we're slowly bringing the gardens back round again through loving restoration, which is a very slow process, but nevertheless it's extremely worthwhile and rewarding. So this is the Edwardian cutting garden, and you can see the hall in the background, which is circa 15th century. We'll just walk through. On some of these beds we'll be working this afternoon, and generally what happens is we have a walk through the garden when we first arrive, and we just prioritise what needs doing. So there may be a bit of weeding, a bit of deadheading. So you can see down here we've got this Alchemilla mollis, which is lady's mantle, and these are all the flowers which have been through the early summer this year. So we need now to cut back and let all of the new shoots come through, and if we're really lucky they may provide us with a later display. There's lots of plants in the garden that have been windswept, blown onto the paths, so it's my job to cut those back now and make sure that all the areas in the garden are accessible, and just have a general tidy up, really, ready for autumn. So this is a typical example of what we would do. So we walk around the garden and we see something that needs urgent care and attention, such as these bent over leaves, and also we've got some bindweed up through here, which is an absolute thug. When we have lots of rain and warm spells like this, bindweed can just shoot up from one week to the next. It's unbelievable. It grows at an astonishing rate. My parents split when I was 15, so I needed something to help ground myself, although I wasn't really consciously aware of that at the time. But I went into the garden and I just really enjoyed being outside, and I found it very therapeutic. And then I tried various other jobs, bar work, and I just wanted 5:30 to come round so I could go outside in the back garden and play around. The next door neighbours would come out and they would say, "My goodness, Selina, it's like watching ground force. Every time you come out you've done a different part of the garden, you know. Have tropical zones and water features." And I got myself a little Vespa, which was gorgeous. It came straight from London, so I cut out the middleman, and I couldn't take any tools on it, obviously. I just had room for my helmet. But it was very cheap to run, and it cost me about £5 a week to go all over the place. And typically I would do small gardens for widows and or elderly couples in and around 4 miles of my family home. And I really enjoyed that. But I wanted to work in larger places. I wanted to do more planting, not so much maintenance. So I went to college and I studied a diploma in historical gardening, and I haven't really looked back since. This gladioli was leaning over because of the winds. So I'll cut this gladioli off and I'll use this in my display. Gladioli you put in as corms earlier in the season, and then they just come up with this wonderful splash of colour, and they just look fantastic in a vase. They're so showy, aren't they? If you go on a horticultural course, you'll get to learn about all the different components of a plant and all their names: the petal, the stem, the nodes, the leaf joints. There we are. Lovely flowers from the garden. Years ago, you'd have to ensure that there was fresh fruit, veg and flowers on the table for the Lord and Lady of the house every day of the year, 365 days. So people would have done this every day, which is why we're trying to recreate gardens like this wherever we can to keep the heritage going. We have seen a lot of changes in this garden, because when we first started it was purely weeding tasks like we're doing today. But last year we were able to do quite a lot of planting, weren't we, in the Edwardian garden, and that border along there you couldn't even see the wall. These, we put some stakes in with these last year, didn't we, but we just haven't had a chance this year, unfortunately. So we'll have to cut these back now. the worst ones. Every day I feel so grateful that I can make a living out of what I consider a gift, honestly. And I'd be so depressed if I wasn't able to fulfil my gardening through my work. I know I would be depressed, because it's just such a creative outlet for me. And there's no way I can imagine myself doing anything else. We really need a driving force in a big garden like this, because it certainly doesn't take care of itself. And when you consider years ago, a place of this sort of stature would have maybe 20, 30 gardeners on full time. They would have people getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and actually raking the gravel driveways and gravel paths, and absolutely nothing was left straggly. It was all immaculate, wasn't it, Judy? All the time it had to look good. All the edges were cut neat. So this is the rose garden, and I love roses. It smells absolutely beautiful. There has been, with this rose garden, we have had some problems with the soil, which has gone quite sour. So we had to replace all the soil with mushroom compost and manure. We mixed it all up and put it in several years ago now. Look at this lovely convolvulus bindweed growing. Do you know what? I had this garden once. A lady phoned me up and said, "Oh, we've got the most beautiful pink flowers all along the border." It was this lovely wall garden, 17th century wall garden. Oh, it's the most stunning pink flowers all the way along. And I said, "Well, when will they appear?" So any time sort of in the next few weeks. So anyway, I turned up to start the contract, and I realised it was just a whole bed of bindweed. So these are the rose beds that have gone sour, unfortunately. So we dug a little square pit, about 24 inches square and a few foot down, 3.5 foot down, just to get some soil analysis and see what was going on. But it is a bit of a mystery. So I'm not really quite sure what to try. I bought some chemicals, which were rather expensive. A pot like that for £60, which we water on every now and then. And there are some improvements. I mean, we have got some leaf coming through here, but there's still quite a lot of dead material. Actually, we need to get in here and prune all this dead out and give them another good feed with some well-rotted manure or something. And what I'll probably be inclined to do is then, once we've pruned the dead out, given them a good feed, we'll let them come through the winter and see what's happening in springtime. If there's no improvement in the spring, we'll have to have them all out and replace the soil again, unfortunately. So when you're deadheading a rose, often people will just snip tops off like that, but that's no good for the plant, because it's very rare that it's going to be able to put some more flower buds on top of this strappy growth here. So always go down sort of 6 inches or so into the plant, and then that way you let the air and the light get through the remainder of the plant, and he's much more likely to use the energy then to produce some lovely new flower buds. I never know what email I'm going to receive in the morning. I never know what letter might come through the post. And I've been to some amazing places. I've travelled all around. I've been, international. So I don't really want to look 5 years ahead, to be honest. I just work with seasons. What are people going to expect from you if you become a garden designer or a horticulturalist? Well, they're going to want you to come up with some sort of concept, idea. Go into the garden and feel instantly like you know what's going to work there. And it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be a garden where they can take their friends and entertain, and they'll want to have barbecues and sit on the terrace with wine and things. And you need to sell them yourself, your knowledge, your experience, and what you've learnt over the years, so they know that they're picking the right person for their project. And also, it's very important to make sure you can deliver what you're actually promising. So do your research. Don't be afraid to try radical ideas. You can mix contemporary and old styles. It's quite similar to interiors in that respect. Just make sure you've got a good knowledge of your plants and your materials and what you're working with, and that will carry you through well. Let Mother Nature do the work if you can, because gardening's hard enough work as it is. And sometimes the best gardens all come from experimenting, and occasionally you will get things wrong, but some of the loveliest surprises in a garden have come from just letting Mother Nature do her thing. And plants are quite opportunistic, and they know where they can survive best, and a plant in a happy place is always going to give you a nice garden. So now we're going to cut this rheum down. So these are the old flower stalks, flower stems, and the seeds. These are the seeds here. So each one of those would create a new rheum. They've got fantastic leaves, big leaves, a bit like Gunnera maculata, aren't they, a little bit? But the flowers are amazing. Here it gives us a place for the eye to rest, so we've got all these lovely flowers around us, lots of colour, and your eye as it goes along, it just needs places where it can rest before it moves on to the next splash. And so it is foliage primarily now, although earlier on it did have the most fantastic plumes of red. Thank you for watching me in the gardens today. I hope you've enjoyed what you've been watching and that it's been interesting for you. And if you choose to have a career in horticulture, I can promise you, you'll have a fantastic time, and good luck. My top tip would be gain as much experience as you can, and don't focus necessarily on one thing on the outset. Just take on anything that interests you, even remotely, and you may have more fun with it than what you originally anticipated.